Welcome to my trailer analysis video for Mutazione. Today we're going to ask, is it my genre? Before we get there, I want to bring up a piece that was created by IGN. Video games have happily outgrown their genre labels. The author says, the games we play these days are more nuanced and varied than they've ever been before. I couldn't agree more. Defining genre in these days is way beyond using simple terms like it's a platformer, it's a shooter. Those terms don't work, and it's hard enough to talk about genre because the word, the idea, all of it sounds... Let's just simplify for a second and just say a genre is really about, is this my thing? Is it something that I'm going to enjoy? And we like to reduce games into this bite-sized, hand-overable thing where we say, I think you're going to like it because it is like this. And that's very, very hard. It's part of the difficulty in communicating genre in general. But more importantly, it's harder when you're talking about indie games. And that's where I live. That's where I spend all my time. I make indie game trailers, and I love talking about indie game trailers, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about the launch trailer for Mutazione. It's kind of my favorite game of the year, and before I get any deeper than any of that, let's just watch the launch trailer together. I love this phone call. I love how the music kicks in with a voice. I mean, and as a replacement for the character's voice. This shot right here. This mystery right here. There's a little tease of something in the water back there. This is so key. Everyone's super nice. I love this hug. It's a dark turn, but it goes somewhere really important. That transition. So much more. It's kind of ridiculous. This is where it brings it all around. You could stop there, but there's a little bit more that they want to tease. This is going somewhere a little tense. And I think that this trailer is pretty perfect except for the walking part at the end here. That wasn't necessary. There's something special about this trailer in the way that it captures so much about what makes the game special. And one of the most unspoken, quieter parts of this is that it's a quieter trailer. It's a quieter game. It's longer than most trailers. Most trailers you want to keep at like a minute, 24 seconds, approximately. But this one, you need to let things breathe a little bit because that's the spirit and tone of the game, is that it breathes. I typically rush through games. I kind of do critical path, maybe the side quests, but in this one, I wanted to stop and see how everyone was doing. I wanted to talk to everybody. And that's pretty special about this particular kind of genre. It's about being chill and resting and recuperating a little bit. If you're going through a hard time, this is a perfect game for you. And that's hard to put into a genre label. Yeah, so I want let's get into let's rewatch some key bits from the trailer. I don't really care about logos. You can skip those. The part of the trailer that really kicks things off is when you see Kai at the lighthouse. The pelican flies by, and you start to hear already. I believe the term for this is J-cut, where you start hearing what's happening in the next scene before you're actually seeing it, and that's the phone call is starting to happen now. Phone dialing is so nostalgic, romantic in this. Like, what's happening here is this is actually framing the narrative of the game, which is framing the genre of the actual game, which is as a story adventure game, narrative adventure. The closest analog you might see in some of the opening shots here, with especially the moments where you see the rolling boat flying by, that might compare it a little bit to Oxenfree. There's a beginning and an end here, and we're going to contextualize everything that you're going to be seeing within story. And that's the first point, is that this is a narrative adventure game. Hey, just wanted to pop in from the future. Part of the time powers thing. So there's one key part that in the present day I'm about to forget, and that's that the text that you're seeing at the bottom of the screen is telegraphing that you're reading a lot in the game. There is no voiceover and that sort of thing, and that's a key part to note in the genre. So lots of reading. That's all. Okay. Back to your present tense. Bye-bye. The next thing that's really important is this line here. Everyone's super nice is really critical to understand, because that's very, very important. You see Tongue pick her up. You see everyone around a campfire. Mew, she's amazing. She's kind of my favorite character by far. Yoki's pretty amazing too. I love that hug. But this everyone is super nice thing is so critical to the precise and unique genre of Mutazione, because it's character rich. You're really going to feel for everyone. You might even remember everyone as a deep, like, you feel very bonded to them. Like, I'm probably never going to forget Mew. I might forget, the name of the shaman that you're hugging, the dot shaman. And like I said, I just really wanted to know what everyone was doing. I want to make sure everyone was okay. I feel like that's pretty key to what this game is. I'm going to keep going. This part here where you see that Grandpa has been pretty ill. So this is a critical part in trailers. You need a tonal shift from happy, everyone's really nice, to what's the core tension here. This is part of narrative framework, narrative 101. But when Grandpa's really ill, that shifts your emotional tone to both being, sad, grieving, that sort of thing. But also, where is this going? This destabilizes the viewer. It makes you wonder, okay, what's going to happen? Where's this going? And you would never guess where that's going. This is going to lead into the gardening mechanic, which is where it goes in the game. And there's so much that I could say about gardening, but the whole game you're foraging, you're collecting these swamp foxtail seeds, you're collecting all these beautiful objects that you're finding growing all over this mutated island to get to this next scene here, which is a garden. Now, there's a lot that could be said about whether or not you want to use user interface within game trailers, but here I believe it's critical. You want to see the full seed box. You want to see that she's planting a tea plant and what that's going to do as it pops up. Now, that's not going to make sense, but you need to understand that there is a really robust, deep mechanic to gardening that there's not really a category for this. This isn't anything like Stardew Valley, where there's also gardening, or some of the many other kinds of gardening games. The gardening here is less about you sowing and reaping, and it's far more about restoring and giving back after maybe being kind of a consumer in your life. This is about going from being someone who takes to someone who gives. And this is a really complicated, nuanced mechanic, complicated, nuanced narrative element, and emotionally it's super, super rich, because you're actually developing moods for each garden. This one, you're developing a euphoria garden, which is kind of hard to explain, and that's actually why it's so important for the next line that you see come up in the dialogue at the bottom of the screen. There's so much more though. This is the Pacific Garden. It's kind of hard to explain. Exactly. And so this part here, Kai is working on her drum, and her grandpa is excited that something's happening between them. I promise I won't cry in describing this game, because there's so much emotion and substance to every single scene here that, like, I did cry a lot throughout the game. Sometimes really happy tears, sometimes there's some real mourning that happens. And this is the key, it's hard to explain. This isn't something that I would recommend saying in most game trailers. You kind of would want to evoke more without saying that things are difficult. But it helps you to understand what's happening in this next kind of chaotic mania of weird things. Of suddenly you're seeing an island floating in the sky. But it comes back around to the conversation with Kai and her mom, and that her mom loves her, and the whole thing has been framed within a narrative, and that's the most important takeaway. It doesn't matter if you like gardening. Don't worry about that. It doesn't matter if you don't know that the gardening is musically oriented and that you're actively doing some kind of composition. We don't need to explain that. We don't even need to explain that this is kind of a grief game. This is a game about processing your losses. We don't need to say any of those things. We simply need to wrap it around in the story and bring you back to a point where you see that this is going somewhere. The story is going somewhere. There is a greater mystery here. And that's what happens with this next shot. This shot is teasing a very late point in the game where Kai goes and confronts the core tensions of the island. And that's what this next shot is about too. Is it's confronting those. This is that moment in the end of the trailer where Kai is going through that tunnel. It is extremely dramatically important, but I don't think that comes across in the trailer because you don't. It's part of the hard to explain part. It's not as important on that. What's more important is the end of the phone call, which brings closure to the trailer's narrative framework of the beginning of the phone call and the end of the phone call, so that you understand that this is really about an unfolding story. And there's, of course, a little flash here at the very, very end, which is kind of just a little tiny additional tension point. I don't know that we should even really discuss that, because again, that's part of the discovery that you're going to be finding in the game. And so this is the key. When describing a game like Mutazione, you want to make sure that the active tensions of the story come through beautifully with beautiful music, beautiful narrative framework, so that the person who's playing the game or wants to play the game decides, this is for me because I like games about stories. If you like games about stories, Mutazione is probably your thing. If you don't like any games that have lots and lots of emotion and processing low points and triumphant celebrations of friendship, then it's probably not for you. But I might suggest that Mutazione is the first game that I would universally recommend to everyone this year. It's kind of my favorite. But I'll stop gushing. This has been my first, I guess this will be my first video for Is It My Genre? I hope you've appreciated some of this trailer analysis, and I hope you tune in with me next time that we do a video like this where it's about, is it my genre? Alright, thanks so much. Bye-bye.